Buster wouldn't let go of my sleeve. I was standing in the foyer, just trying to kick off my shoes after a long day when he lunged. He's a big dog, usually quiet, but he grabbed the wool of my old brown blazer and pulled with everything he had. I heard the fabric give a sharp, ugly tear. That blazer was a relic from the 90s, something I'd kept in the back of my closet for 30 years. I cursed under my breath, shrugged the jacket off, and tossed it toward the bench. That's when I heard the metallic click on the hardwood. It was a silver locket, broken clean in half. I picked it up, feeling the cold weight in my palm. I had to squint to see the engraving on the inside S. 08-14-1992. I sat down on the bench. My heart started doing something it hadn't done in a long time. It felt like a door I'd locked decades ago had just been kicked open. I'd spent 35 years at a logistics firm in Chicago. Same commute on the Metro, same lukewarm coffee, same gray cubicle. I was a company man. I followed the rules. I collected my pension 3 months ago, and since then, the house had been nothing but silence. My wife, Mary, leaves early for her volunteer shifts. I stay back with Buster. That was my routine. But those initials, S.H., they belonged to Sarah Higgins. Sarah was a junior analyst in the early 90s. She was quiet, smart, and had this way of looking at a spreadsheet like she was reading a novel. We grabbed lunch a few times at a deli near the Loop. We talked about the wind off the lake and the grind of the city. That was it, or so I told myself for 30 years. In the fall of '95, Sarah was just gone. No farewell party, no 2-week notice. The office rumor mill said she moved back to some small town in Iowa or got married. I didn't ask questions. But I remembered a Tuesday in August back then. I was walking past Frank Harrison's office. He was the executive VP back then, and I saw her. She was standing in the hallway, her face pale, her eyes bloodshot. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. I didn't stop. I just kept walking to the break room to get my coffee. That night, I found a draft of her voluntary resignation on the copier. It was dated 2 weeks before she actually left. It mentioned private reasons. I folded it, put it in my pocket, and eventually tucked it into a file at the bottom of my desk drawer. I never looked at it again. Until now. I sat in the dark kitchen, staring at that half locket under the overhead light. The edge where it had broken was jagged. It looked like a wound. Mary came home late. I heard the garage door, then her keys hitting the counter. She went straight to the kitchen to get a glass of water. She didn't see me sitting there at first. "Mark, why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just left the locket on the table and went to my study. I needed to find that file. It took me 3 days to find her. I used an old alumni network for the firm. She was living outside Des Moines, Iowa. I sent an email. Short, direct. I found something of yours. Mark from Chicago. 2 days later, she called. Her voice was deeper, older, but she still had that same measured cadence. "Meet me at the diner off I-80, she said. I told Mary I was going to see an old friend. She just nodded and went back to her gardening. We've lived together for 40 years, and sometimes I think we're just two people sharing a roof and a history we don't discuss. I drove 400 miles. The Iowa landscape was flat, honest, and indifferent. Sarah was already in a booth when I got there. She looked like a woman who had worked hard every day of her life. No jewelry, simple clothes, tired eyes. I put the half locket on the table. She didn't look surprised. She reached into her purse and pulled out the other half. They fit together perfectly. "Stay strong" was engraved on the other side. "I found this in my desk the day they escorted me out," she said. "Someone left it for me. I never knew who." Then she told me the truth. It wasn't just a resignation. Frank Harrison had been siphoning funds from the offshore accounts. Sarah found the trail. When she confronted him, he didn't apologize. He threatened her. He told her he'd ruin her reputation, make sure she never worked in the Midwest again. And then, in that office, he made sure she understood exactly how much power he had over her. "I was pregnant," she said, her voice flat, devoid of the drama I expected. "I was alone. I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't have a witness. I had a choice: fight him and lose everything, or take the severance and disappear. I chose my son." I looked at her, and then I looked at the file. I'd brought the original memo I'd swiped from the copier and a few audit logs I'd quietly printed out before I retired. "Harrison is retired now," I said. "He lives in a gated community in Florida, but the firm still exists. The liability is still there. We can file a civil suit for wrongful termination and harassment. I'll testify. I saw you that day. I have the documents." She looked out the window at the passing trucks. "Why now, Mark? You waited 30 years. "I didn't wait," I said. I ignored it. "There's a difference, and now my pension feels like blood money." The lawsuit took a year. It was a grind of depositions, legal fees, and aggressive lawyers from the firm trying to paint Sarah as a disgruntled ex-employee looking for a payday. I sat across from Frank Harrison in a conference room. He was a frail old man now, but he still had that same arrogant twitch in his jaw. "You're making a mistake, Mark," he whispered during a break. "Maybe," I said, "but I'm making it." We won, or rather they settled. The firm didn't want the publicity of a 30-year-old sexual harassment and embezzlement cover-up hitting the Chicago Tribune. Sarah got a 7-figure settlement and a formal letter of apology. Harrison lost his honorary board seats and slunk back to Florida. The night after the final papers were signed, I came home to a quiet house. Mary was sitting at the dining table with a glass of bourbon. She hadn't made dinner. "It's over?" she asked. "Yeah, it's over." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small leather-bound diary from 1995. "I was Frank's secretary back then, Mark." "You remember that," she said, her voice steady. "I saw Sarah come out of his office that day. I knew what he did to her. I saw him shredding the real audit reports." I felt the room get smaller. "You never said a word." "We were 3 months away from our wedding," Mary said. "We were buying this house. We needed your job, and we needed Frank to like us. I was a 24-year-old girl terrified of losing the only life I had planned." She looked at the silver locket on the table. "I'm the one who put that in her desk. I bought it at a shop in the mall and left it there because I was too much of a coward to stand next to her. And I'm the one who put that memo on the copier for you to find. I hoped you'd be braver than me." She took a sip of her drink. "I've lived with that every time I looked at you for 30 years. Every time you got a promotion, every time we celebrated an anniversary, I thought about Sarah Higgins." I looked at Buster sleeping on the rug. The dog didn't know anything about the cost of a house or the weight of a secret. He just knew the smell of old wool. The next morning, I went out to the fire pit in the backyard. I burned the old memos. I burned the legal correspondence. I watched the black ash drift up and disappear over the Chicago suburbs. I don't feel like a hero. I don't feel like the world is a better place. I just feel like a man who finally settled a debt he'd been carrying without even realizing it. Sarah is back in Iowa. She's starting a foundation for single mothers. We don't call each other. There's nothing left to say. I went back inside. Mary was in the kitchen making toast. The sun was hitting the linoleum. "Coffee's ready," she said. "Thanks," I said. I sat down and watched the steam rise from my mug. "Today is Saturday. I'll mow the lawn. I'll take Buster for a walk. Life doesn't provide a grand conclusion. It just keeps moving, one silent decision at a time. I took a sip of my coffee. It was hot. It was bitter. It was enough.